My husband told me he was leaving me for a younger woman and expected me to cry, to fight, to beg. But when I stayed silent, something inside him broke, and what he did next changed everything. I'm Julia Bennett. I'm 42. After 10 years of marriage and 15 years together, my husband Nathan decided to walk out, just like that. He said he'd found someone new, younger, exciting, and that he wanted a fresh start. And the twist? He was furious when I didn't fall apart. A couple of weeks ago, I was getting ready for a work event. We were all supposed to meet up and just have a good time. Nothing fancy, just something to break the routine. Honestly, I was actually looking forward to it. A rare night out for myself. I was slipping on my heels when Nathan walked into the room and said, "We need to talk." I figured it was something about the kids, or maybe a bill that came in late. Something normal. But no. He stood there, looked me in the eye, and said, "I've met someone. I'm leaving." Just like that. We've got 2 boys, Micah and Levi, 12 and 11. This wasn't just a breakup. It was the collapse of a family, a decade of marriage, shattered in under a minute. And yet, I didn't break. Yes, it hurt, but there was a strange kind of relief hiding underneath it all. Like part of me had been waiting for this moment, hoping someone, anyone, would finally say it out loud. Because the truth? We hadn't been happy in a long time. We barely spoke unless it was about the boys or groceries. Even intimacy had become more of a routine than a connection. And suddenly, I realized he wasn't the only one who had already let go. Still, hearing him say it, hearing him choose someone else, and say it like it was just another Thursday, that hit differently. He kept talking like he had it all planned out, a small apartment already lined up, a timeline. He'd move out temporarily while we figured things out. Said we'd co-parent like mature adults. He sounded proud of himself, like this was noble. Meanwhile, I just sat there, nodding, barely blinking, floating outside my body, watching it all unfold like I was watching a bad movie I couldn't pause. You ever have one of those moments where you think, this can't be my life? It was almost laughable, too ridiculous to even feel real. But there I was, standing in the middle of our living room, watching my husband break up with me, like he was cancelling a dinner reservation. By the time he finished laying out his neat little plan for our separation, I realized I was already an hour late to the work event. The same one I'd been looking forward to all week. I grabbed my phone, opened the Uber app, and walked outside. I wasn't about to sit through another minute of that melodrama. As I waited on the curb, phone in hand, I got a message from Mark, one of my co-workers. "Hey, where are you? You're super late." Without thinking much, I typed back a quick reply, half joke, half vent. "Oh, Mark, you don't even know the half of it. My husband just dumped me. Guess I'm single now." Only, I didn't send that message to Mark. I sent it to Nathan. Yep, my husband, the one who just announced he was leaving me for someone 10 years younger. By the time I realized my mistake, it was already too late. Message sent, no unsend, no delete, just instant dread. Now, logic would tell you he shouldn't care, right? He's the one who's leaving. He's got his shiny new girlfriend. Why should he care what I text my coworkers? But no. That one accidental text sent him into a full-blown meltdown. He storms outside, absolutely livid, starts yelling like I'm the one who cheated. "How can you joke about something like this?" he shouts. And I'm just standing there thinking, are you serious right now? "You literally just told me you're leaving me for someone else," I said. "What did you expect me to do? Beg you to stay?" I tried explaining. It was just a dumb message, a running joke at work. Half our department has been getting divorced lately, and we've all been joking that the office is cursed. Anyone who works there is doomed to split up. But did he care? Of course not. He wasn't angry because of the joke. He was angry because I wasn't falling apart. It's like he wanted me to cry, to beg, to be devastated. But I wasn't. I was just done. And I think that shook him more than anything else. So instead of following through on his big, confident exit plan, Nathan suddenly decides he's staying, just like that. The man who had it all figured out is now backpedaling. He says he's not so sure about the divorce anymore. Starts walking back everything he said. But instead of sitting down and having a real conversation like adults, he switches tactics. He shuts down. Silent treatment. Passive-aggressive avoidance. Anytime I ask when he's moving out, he either changes the subject or pretends he didn't hear me. One day, during one of the few conversations we'd had since all of this started, Nathan made a comment that stopped me cold. He said, "You know, I was going to be generous with you in the divorce, but after that stupid text, I'm going to take you for everything you've got." And he wasn't joking. He genuinely believed that one careless message, sent by mistake, was some kind of betrayal. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You can't take what I don't care about. All I want is my freedom." And that's when something in him snapped. Without warning, he slapped me. Hard. In all the years we were together, Nathan had never laid a hand on me. Not once. So when it happened, when I felt the sting across my face, it wasn't even the pain that hit me the hardest. It was the shock. This was the man I had trusted with my life. The man I had children with. The man who used to hold me through anxiety attacks and whispered that he'd never hurt me. And now he was standing in front of me with rage in his eyes, and my skin still burning where his hand had landed. But the strangest part? That night, I heard him crying. From the bathroom. Sobbing like he was the one in pain. I just sat there in the dark, unable to process any of it. How do you go from striking your wife to acting like you're the victim? I moved into the living room that same night. I couldn't sleep beside him. Couldn't even breathe in the same space without feeling sick. And yet somehow, he's the one acting like I betrayed him. He's refusing to move out, dragging his feet on the divorce. Now he's even threatening to take the house, the kids, everything. Why? Because I didn't break down sobbing when he told me he was leaving me. At this point, I'm just waiting him out. I've got a lawyer. I've started documenting everything. This isn't just about heartbreak anymore. It's about survival. I didn't think it would get this bad, but here we are. It's strange how fast things can spiral when someone's pride gets bruised. One moment they're walking out on you, and the next they're trying to destroy you just because you didn't fall apart. Things went from bad to worse after that night he slapped me. I remember thinking, this must be rock bottom. But no, Nathan found a way to dig deeper. He started treating me like I was the villain, cold stares across the room, silent contempt. He wouldn't speak unless he had to, and when he did, it was clipped, calculated, cruel. Anytime I brought up the divorce, or even something about the kids, he'd just pretend I wasn't there, like I had become a ghost in my own house. I remember one night, I was in the kitchen, washing dishes after dinner. He walked in, didn't say a word, didn't even glance my way, just moved past me like I didn't exist. Then, completely out of nowhere, he muttered, "I was planning to make this easy on you. I wasn't going to make things difficult. But now, you're going to regret that text for the rest of your life." I froze, my hands still in the soapy water, trying to figure out if I'd just imagined it. He was still mad about that? A message I sent by accident? A joke? A half sentence that wasn't even meant for him? I hadn't cheated. I hadn't lied. I hadn't hurt him. But in his mind, I had committed some unforgivable sin. All because I didn't fall to my knees when he said he was leaving. Then he said it again, that same twisted promise that he was going to take everything from me, the kids, the house, my peace, like nothing in our life together ever mattered. I asked him directly, "What are you even talking about? You're the one who left. You've already moved on." He didn't answer, just smirked and walked away like some silent villain in a bad movie. It wasn't just cold anymore. It was hostile. It was calculated. It was like living with someone who hated me for no reason that made any sense. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, it did. One night, Nathan sits me down with that look. The one people use when they're about to have some kind of deep, life-altering conversation. And for a split second, I actually thought, maybe, just maybe, we were going to talk like adults. I was wrong. He looks at me and says, "I've been thinking, maybe we rushed into this whole divorce thing. Maybe we can work it out." I just stared at him. This man who, not even a week ago, told me I had ruined everything, that I'd regret a single text for the rest of my life. The same man who threatened to take the kids, the house, my sanity. Now he was sitting here, calmly suggesting we work it out. Like none of that ever happened. I didn't know whether to laugh in his face or scream into a pillow. It felt like some kind of psychological warfare, a game where he kept moving the finish line just to watch me chase it. So I asked him, "What about Avery?" In case it wasn't clear, Avery's the 25-year-old intern he left me for, just in case anyone forgot. He shrugs and says, "I'm not so sure about her anymore. She's getting a little clingy. Plus, she wants kids, and you know I can't have more kids after the vasectomy." I just sat there, blinking. This man had the audacity to leave our marriage, blow up our home, break our family apart, and now he's circling back because his 20-something fling wants a baby? I sat there, blinking, trying to comprehend what he had just said. So this is what it had come to. His affair was cracking at the seams, and now he was circling back to me, like I was some consolation prize, a fallback, a plan B in case his fantasy didn't pan out. The audacity was almost laughable. But of course, Nathan didn't stop there. He leaned in, eyes soft, voice suddenly nostalgic, and started painting this rose-tinted picture of our life together. The house, the boys, the memories we once made. And for a heartbeat, I almost fell for it. I almost let the idea of trying again take root. For the kids, for the history, for the version of us that no longer existed. But then the fog lifted, and I remembered the way his hand struck my face, the threats, the cold stares, the silence so heavy it could crush bone. So I looked at him, calm and clear, and said, "Nathan, we've been living a lie for years. You walked away long before you actually left, and so did I. Whatever we had, it's already gone." He stared at me, like he couldn't recognize the woman sitting in front of him, like he expected me to fold, to crawl back, to beg. Instead, I stood my ground. And that's when his mask slipped. "Fine," he snapped. "I'll move out. But don't expect mercy when it comes to the divorce." There it was, the real Nathan. And just when I thought the storm might settle, the boys started noticing. One afternoon, Micah walked into the room and quietly asked me if everything was okay. He's 12, but he's not a kid when it comes to reading a room. He knew something was wrong. Even if we hadn't said a word, he felt the silence, the tension, the shift in the air. I knelt down in front of him and did my best to reassure him. I told him sometimes parents go through rough patches, but it doesn't change how much we love him or his little brother. But Michael wasn't buying it, not for a second. He looked me dead in the eye and asked, "Is Dad leaving us?" That question broke something in me. It hit harder than anything Nathan had ever said. Because how do you answer that? How do you look your child in the eye and tell him his family is falling apart? I didn't want to lie, but I also couldn't hand him the full truth, raw and bleeding, not yet. So I said, Dad's going to be moving out for a little while, but he still loves you and Levi more than anything, and you'll still see him, I promise. Micah didn't say a word after that. He just gave a small nod, turned around, and walked away. And I stood there, hollow. In that moment, I felt like I had failed. Failed as a wife, and now I was failing as a mother too. All I ever wanted was to protect my boys, keep them safe, keep them whole. But now they were caught in the crossfire of something they never asked for. Later that night, Levi came to me, quiet, eyes red, and then he burst into tears. Levi came up to me, sniffling, his eyes already red, voice shaking. Then he asked, "Is it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Is that why Dad's leaving?" That question shattered me. I pulled him close, sat him down, and told him over and over that none of this was his fault, that it had nothing to do with him or Micah. But how do you convince a child of that when his entire world is falling apart in front of him? The next day, Nathan came home in a rage, full meltdown. He slammed the door so hard the picture frames rattled, then launched into a rant about how things with Avery were already falling apart. Apparently, she was upset. Said he wasn't committing fast enough. Wanted to know when they were moving in together. And there he was, pacing in our hallway, complaining that his 25-year-old girlfriend was pressuring him for more. I stood there, arms crossed, not saying a word for a moment. Then I told him, calmly but cold, "This is what happens when you try to live a life you're not ready for. You should have thought about that before dragging your own family through the dirt." He didn't like that. Not one bit. He snapped, started yelling again, accusing me of being bitter, jealous. He said I was the reason everything was falling apart, that if I'd been more understanding, more supportive, none of this would have happened. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not out of humour, but from sheer disbelief. "You're blaming me?" I asked. "You walked out, you left, you found someone new, remember?" Now that his perfect little fantasy was crumbling, he suddenly decided it was all my fault. He had no defence, no logic, just ego. When I calmly called him out, he didn't try to reason or even argue. He simply stormed out of the house, slamming the door like a teenager who didn't get his way. And that's when I knew. I was done. Completely done. No fixing this. No working things out. No more hoping he'd snap out of it. That chapter was closed, and I wasn't turning the page back. Strangely, I felt peace. That night, I sat alone and made a decision that had been waiting quietly in the back of my mind for far too long. I was going to find a new home for me and the boys. I was going to file for divorce. No more second chances, no more compromises. I didn't care anymore what Nathan wanted or didn't want. I just knew I needed to protect myself and my children from the toxicity we'd been drowning in. He wasn't going to change, and I had no interest in sticking around to see how much worse it could get. So I got to work. Started making calls, checked out apartments, reached out to my lawyer. Step by step, I began quietly rebuilding what he tried to tear down. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe again. No panic, no confusion, just quiet, clear purpose. I was in control, and that felt incredible. Of course, nothing about this journey was going to be simple. The moment I started gaining clarity, Nathan's behaviour took a nosedive. He became unpredictable. One moment he was sulking and cold, acting like I was the villain in his story. The next, he was bitter and explosive, twisting every conversation into a guilt trip. It was like he couldn't decide who he wanted to be, the heartless ex or the heartbroken victim. Either way, it was exhausting. Every conversation felt like walking a minefield. I never knew if I'd be met with silence, sarcasm, or a screaming match. But despite all the chaos he threw my way, I didn't budge. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was responding with strength. He no longer had the power to drag me into his storms. Every day was a different version of him. Some mornings he'd treat me like I was invisible, walking right past me without a single word. Other days, he'd corner me with guilt-throwing out comments about the divorce, about how it was hurting the kids, about how I was giving up too easily. It was emotional whiplash, and I was done riding the roller coaster. But there was one day, one moment, that flipped everything. One afternoon I was waiting in the car line at school to pick up the boys. Everything was quiet, normal. Then suddenly, Micah's phone starts buzzing non-stop. At first, I figured it was just his friends from school texting in a group chat or something. He's 12. It happens. But then he looked at the screen, confused, and said, "Why is Dad calling me? He never calls me during the day." That made my stomach drop, because Nathan, he hadn't shown that kind of attention in weeks. He barely spoke to the boys, unless it was convenient for him. So for him to suddenly call during school hours and directly to Micah's phone, something wasn't right. I told Micah to answer the call, and the moment he put the phone to his ear, I heard it. Nathan's voice, loud, frantic, totally unhinged. He was yelling about something, his words all tangled in panic. I couldn't make out every detail, but I caught just enough to know it wasn't good. I heard him say, "She's gone," and "What am I supposed to do now?" Micah just sat there, frozen, eyes wide like he was watching something he was way too young to witness. He didn't know what to say. Honestly, how could he? So I reached over, gently took the phone from his hands, and asked Nathan what was going on. That's when the whole mess came spilling out. Avery, the girl he left our family for, had packed her things and walked out. No warning, no goodbye, just vanished. Apparently, she'd finally had enough of waiting around for him to commit. When she realized he had no real plan to move in or build a life with her, she cut her losses and left. I wasn't shocked. I mean, what did he honestly expect? She's 25, with her whole life ahead of her. She wasn't going to sit around while he dragged his feet through a messy divorce and played house in two worlds. But the part that really got me? He called Micah. Not a friend. Not his therapist. Our son. He dumped his heartbreak on a 12-year-old. That was a new low, even for Nathan. I told him flat out, "I don't know why you're calling Micah about this. He's a child. It's not his job to help you process your relationship drama." Nathan didn't like that. Of course he didn't. He kept going, rambling about how Avery was the best thing that ever happened to him, that he didn't know how to cope, that I wouldn't understand what it felt like to be abandoned. Oh, I wouldn't understand what it feels like to be left. The irony was unbelievable. After that call, Nathan fully leaned into victim mode. He dragged himself around the house like a teenager dumped for the first time. Worse, he started using the boys to get sympathy. Maybe he thought if I saw him hurting, I'd forgive him. But he was wrong. I was already done. One night after putting the boys to bed, he sat across from me at the table and started with, "I'm really struggling." I knew where this was going, but I let him speak. He talked about how hard it's been since Avery left, how he couldn't make sense of anything anymore. And then came the line I should have seen coming. "Maybe we could try again, for the boys." Of course, he brought them into it. It was like everything that happened between us had vanished from his memory. The slap, the threats, him walking out to chase Avery. He looked at me like none of that had ever existed. I stared at him, trying to wrap my head around how he honestly thought this would work. Then I said it, clear and steady. No, Nathan, we're not getting back together. You made your choice, and now we're living with it. This isn't about the boys. It's about you trying to fix something that's already broken beyond repair. He didn't take it well, slammed his fist on the table, and started pacing like a caged animal. So that's it? You're just throwing our whole life away? We've got a family, Julia. For God's sake! I kept my voice calm even though I was shaking inside. I'm not throwing anything away. You did that the moment you left for someone else. This is just the consequence. He stormed off again, but the damage was already done. That moment told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't going to stop. He'd keep trying to twist things, rewrite the past, drag us back into his storm. A few days later, I was doing everything I could to keep things normal for the boys, school, dinner, bedtime routines, all of it. But Nathan was getting more unstable by the day. He stopped showing up the way he used to. Always had some excuse for why he couldn't take them to soccer or help with homework. And when he was home, the tension was suffocating. We were all walking on eggshells. One night, Micah came to me and asked, "Why does Dad seem so mad all the time?" That broke me. I'd tried so hard to shield them from all of it, but clearly they felt it. I told him the truth in the simplest way I could, that sometimes grown-ups go through hard things and it's not their fault. But Micah's sharp. He knew more than he said. Then came the moment that pushed everything over the edge. Nathan was supposed to pick up the boys from school. He never showed. No call, no message. I had to leave work early and drive over myself. When we got home, he was just sitting there on the couch, staring at the television like nothing happened. I asked why he didn't pick them up. He just shrugged. And that's when I lost it. Are you serious, Nathan? You didn't even call. The boys were waiting for you. I couldn't hold it in. He barely glanced up from the television and muttered, "I forgot. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. That was his response. And right then, something inside me snapped. I realized I wasn't just done with the marriage. I was done with him. As a person. This wasn't the man I married, and there was no coming back from this. That night, after the boys went to sleep, I made my decision. I wasn't going to wait around for him to figure things out anymore. I had already found an apartment, it would be ready in a couple of weeks, and whether Nathan helped or not, I was leaving. I started packing, slowly, just the essentials at first. I didn't want to tip him off too soon, but I knew the day was coming when I'd have to tell him. And the part that weighed on me the most, telling Micah and Levi, I didn't want them to feel like I was tearing them away from their father. But staying in that house wasn't healthy for any of us. So I began preparing for that conversation too, figuring out how to explain everything without turning their dad into the villain. Even though deep down, I knew he already was. I knew the boys still needed to love their dad, even if he was unraveling everything around them. But one thing was clear. I was getting out. I wasn't going to wait around for another slap, another guilt trip, or another threat. This was the beginning of the end, and I was ready for it. After I found the new apartment and committed to leaving, I had a bit of a plan in place. But of course, Nathan didn't make anything easy. I knew he'd lose it when I finally told him I was moving out with the kids, but I didn't expect just how bad it would get. So I waited. I didn't say a word until everything was locked in, lease signed, move-in date confirmed. I needed it all in place so he couldn't sabotage anything. One evening, after the boys were in bed, I sat him down. I wanted it to be calm, no drama, no shouting, just two adults, ending something that had been broken for a long time. I looked him in the eye and said, "Nathan, I found a place. The kids and I are moving out in 2 weeks." He just stared at me, like I'd told him I was taking the boys to another planet. Then he got up, started pacing, and snapped, "You're not taking my kids away from me." Mind you, this is the same man who missed pickups, skipped practices, and forgot school events. But now suddenly, they were his kids, and I was the villain. I stayed calm. "I'm not taking them away from you, Nathan. You'll still see them. But this house isn't good for any of us anymore." He didn't want to hear it. He started accusing me of turning the boys against him, saying I was brainwashing them. That's when it escalated. His voice rose. He started pacing again, throwing wild accusations like darts, desperate to hit anything that would hurt. He even brought up that ridiculous text again, the one I accidentally sent him instead of Mark. Seriously? We were still on that? At some point, I realized talking to Nathan was like talking to a wall. He wasn't trying to communicate, he just wanted me to feel guilty for moving forward. So I stopped responding, just sat there and let him rant. Eventually, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him like always. And I knew this was only the beginning of what was coming next. Over the next few days, things turned nasty. Nathan started tossing around legal threats, saying he was going to fight for full custody. Then he crossed the line. He told Micah and Levi that I was taking them away from him. Of course, they were confused, upset. I had to sit both boys down and explain it again. That they'd still see their dad, that no one was taking them away. We just couldn't live together anymore. Micah tried to stay strong, but I saw it in his eyes. He was hurting. He asked, "Does Dad hate you now?" I didn't know what to say. It sure felt like Nathan hated me, but I couldn't say that to a 12-year-old. So I told him, "No, sweetheart. Your dad and I just have different ideas about what's best for our family right now." It was the only way I could protect him without lying. Levi took it even harder. He's always been more sensitive, and the thought of leaving the only home he's ever known was terrifying for him. He asked me, "If we move, will Dad come too?" That question crushed me. I told him gently, "No, baby, Dad won't be moving with us. But you'll still see him, I promise." I could see the confusion in his little face, and it broke my heart. This was the part I dreaded the most. Not the arguments, not the threats, but what it was doing to my boys. 2 weeks later, I finally moved into the new apartment with Micah and Levi. It wasn't fancy or big, but it was ours, and that's what mattered. That first night, after putting the boys to bed, I sat alone in the living room and just breathed. For the first time in so long, there were no mood swings to manage, no walking on eggshells, no tension crawling up the walls. It was quiet, and that quiet felt like freedom. Of course, peace never lasts long with Nathan. The next morning, he called, ranting, screaming, saying I had ruined everything, that the boys were going to hate me for tearing the family apart. I didn't say much, just let him vent. But then, he hit me with something that stopped me cold. "I'm bringing Avery back," he said, "or she's moving in. The boys will see what a real family looks like." I nearly dropped the phone. Avery, the same girl who dumped him because he couldn't commit, was suddenly back? Now she was supposed to be part of my kids' lives. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream at the ridiculousness of it. I told him, "Nathan, you can't just bring someone new into their lives like this. They're already dealing with enough." But he didn't care. In his mind, this was his grand plan, his big redemption arc. Like bringing Avery back would magically make him look like the hero. I hung up, knowing this wasn't the last I'd hear of it. Not by a long shot. A few days later, Micah and Levi went to spend the weekend with Nathan. And of course, Avery was there. When they came back, Micah was quiet. Levi just looked confused. Micah, being older, understood exactly what was going on, and he didn't like it. He told me, "Dad's trying too hard. He acts like everything's fine, but it's not." Levi, on the other hand, was still too young to read between the lines. He asked me, "Is Avery going to be our new mum?" That question hit like a punch to the chest. But I stayed calm. I said, "No, sweetheart, you only have one mom. Avery is just Dad's friend." But deep down, I knew that wasn't enough. Nathan was forcing Avery into their lives far too fast, trying to replace me. The boys were confused, hurt, lost in the middle of something they didn't ask for, and I hated that this was happening to them. Then came the final straw. A few weeks later, Nathan called, ranting again, and out of nowhere, he said it. "I'm going to fight you for full custody. The boys deserve to be with me. You're unstable." Unstable. That word echoed in my head. From him. The man who couldn't keep a girlfriend, couldn't show up for his kids, and once hit me during an argument. He was calling me unstable. That was it. I was done playing nice. I called my lawyer that night and said, "Get ready, he's not going to fight fair." This wasn't about me anymore. It was about protecting Micah and Levi from the chaos their father kept creating. And if that meant going to court and fighting tooth and nail, then so be it. I wasn't letting Nathan wreck their lives just because he couldn't fix his own. Things spiraled fast after Nathan dropped the custody bomb. I knew he'd make things hard, but I never thought he'd take it that far. To him, it was just another game. But to me, it was everything. One minute, Nathan was begging me to get back together. The next, he was threatening to take the boys away from me. At that point, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just exhausted, but I couldn't let him win. This wasn't about our marriage anymore. It was about protecting Micah and Levi from the chaos he kept dragging into their lives. So I did what had to be done. I got serious. I'd already been working with my lawyer quietly, but now it was time to act. I wasn't going to let Nathan rewrite the narrative, painting himself as the perfect dad, and me as some unstable, bitter ex. I knew the truth. And more importantly, my boys knew the truth. We filed for a formal custody agreement. And just like I expected, Nathan lost it when the paperwork landed in his hands. I'll never forget that phone call. He was screaming, accusing me of trying to destroy his bond with the boys. He went on and on about how unfair I was, how I'd pay for this. I sat there in silence, letting him burn out his tantrum. That's what he wanted, a reaction, but I wasn't giving it to him. When he finally took a breath, I said, calm and clear, "Nathan, this isn't about you and me anymore. It's about the kids. They need stability, and that's what I'm fighting for." He hung up on me. Fast forward a few weeks, and we were in court for the first custody hearing. I won't lie, I was a nervous wreck. I had everything documented. Missed school pickups, his mood swings, the fact that he introduced Avery way too soon. But no amount of preparation could ease the weight I felt walking into that courtroom. The boys weren't there, thank God, but the thought of them ever having to choose between their parents tore me apart. Nathan, of course, walked in like he owned the place. Smug, confident, like he actually believed he was going to win. After everything he'd put us through, seeing that look on his face lit a fire in me. The hearing was brutal. Both sides went at it hard. But the real gut punch came when Nathan's lawyer stood up and tried to paint me as unstable, bitter, unfit. He even brought up that same old text again, the one I accidentally sent to him instead of Mark. They tried to twist it, saying I was cold, like I didn't care, the marriage ended. But my lawyer shut it down fast. She brought up the slap, the missed school pickups, Nathan's emotional manipulation, especially toward the boys. She even had text messages from Micah showing how confused and hurt he was by Nathan's behavior. This wasn't about hurting Nathan. It was about protecting our children. And finally, after hours of back and forth, the judge made her decision. I'll never forget the wave of relief that hit me when I heard it. I would get primary custody. Nathan would have visitation, but it would be supervised. It wasn't a perfect win, but it was enough. Enough for me to finally breathe. Enough to know the boys wouldn't be pawns in Nathan's games anymore. He didn't take the decision well. He stormed out of the courtroom like a child throwing a tantrum, muttering about how unfair it all was. I didn't even look at him. I was done giving him my energy. Later that night, he called me. I expected more yelling, but instead, he was crying, full-on sobbing into the phone, saying he never thought things would end this way, that he didn't know how to fix it. And for a moment, a small one, I felt a flicker of sympathy. After all, he was the man I spent 15 years with, the father of my children. But it faded fast, because he made his choices. And this was the result. I told him, Nathan, this is what happens when you don't take responsibility. You're still their dad, but if you want to be in their lives, you need to get your life together. He hung up. Again. In the weeks that followed, things began to settle. The boys started adjusting. Micah stayed quiet, but I could tell he felt safer, more at peace. Levi was bouncing back to his old self, laughing again, sleeping better, smiling more. Nathan started showing up to his supervised visits. At first, I wasn't sure if it was for show or if he was actually trying. But over time, he seemed to be making an effort, at least when it came to the boys. I wasn't about to forgive him. Not yet. He still had a long way to go. And honestly, I didn't trust him enough to let my guard down. I wouldn't let him drag us back into his storm. A couple of months after the custody battle, I got a letter from Nathan. It was long, full of apologies, explanations, and promises that he was trying to change. He admitted he'd been wrong. About leaving for Avery. About forcing her into the boys' lives too soon. About how he treated me. Reading it, I felt a lot. Anger, sadness, and a strange kind of relief. Not because I needed his apology, but because, maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand the damage he caused. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. And honestly, I didn't need to. The boys and we were moving on. Now, months later, life finally feels normal again. Micah and Levi are thriving. We've settled into our routine, and I'm focusing on our future. Nathan is still around, but only in a small way. He's trying. I'll give him that. But trust takes time, and I'm not rushing to hand it back. As for me, I'm just grateful to be free. Free from the chaos, free from the gaslighting, free from the cycle. It hasn't been easy, but I'm stronger now. And whatever comes next, I know I've got my boys, and we're going to be okay.